Is this working? 잠깐만요. I'm going to tell people. 안녕하세요. 안녕하세요. 네. 어서 오세요. 근데 제가 유튜브에서 라이브 할 건데 네. 이거는 켜 놓고 할까요? Can you guys come over to my YouTube? 네. 아름다운 영어 치시면 나올 거예요. 오케이. 안녕하세요. 네. 유튜브로 오시면 네. 거기서 뵐게요. Goodbye. I'll see you there. 잠깐 켜 놓을까? 네. 저희 유튜브에서 뵐게요. Goodbye. Alright. 네, 안녕하세요. Shall we start? 네, 해볼게요. So today we are going to be reading from chapter 14 to chapter 19 or 18. 네, 해볼게요. 네, 질문들이 있으시면 여기 채팅에다 해주시면 되겠습니다. All right. The fifth planet was very strange. It was the smallest of all. There was just enough room for a street lamp and a lamplighter. The little prince couldn't quite understand what use a street lamp and a lamplighter could be up there in the sky on a planet without any people and not a single house. However, he said to himself, it's quite possible that this man is absurd. But he's less absurd than the king, the very vain man, the businessman, and the drunkard. At least his work has some meaning. When he lights his lamp, it's as if he's bringing one more star to life or one more flower. When he puts out his lamp, that sends the flower or the star to sleep, which is a fine occupation and therefore truly useful. 네, 여기서 fifth 할 때 fifth 이렇게 혹은 fifth 이렇게 하기가 쉬워요. 근데 여기를 어떻게 할 거냐면 fifth 바람 나오는 상태에서 숨이 끊기지 않고 fifth 이렇게 갈 거예요. And then 여기 strange 보이시죠? strange 이게 아니라 입술 내밀고 왜냐면 R 때문에 이렇게 할 거예요. strange. Alright. 그 다음에 여기 businessman 나왔는데요. 여기를 businessman 이게 아니라 businessman 하고 businessman 삼음절처럼 할 거예요. 삼음절. Alright. When the little prince reached this planet, he greeted the lamplighter respectfully. Good morning. Why have you just put out your lamp? Orders, the lamplighter answered. Good morning. What orders are those? 네, order는 명령이죠. 여기에 order 발음을 어떻게 했나요, 제가? 네, order라고 하지 않았고 드 발음을 이게 d에 강세가 없으면 르로 하죠. To put out my street lamp. Good evening. and he lit his lamp again. 네, 여기서 evening을 evening으로 안 할 거고 evening, 여기 이음절로 할 거예요. evening, okay? But why have you just lit your lamp again? Orders. I don't understand, said the little prince. There's nothing to understand, said the lamplighter. Orders are orders. Good morning. And he put out his lamp. Then he wiped his forehead with a red checked handkerchief. It's a terrible job I have. It used to be reasonable enough. I put the lamp out mornings and lit it after dark. I had the rest of the day for my own affairs and the rest of the night for sleeping. And since then, orders have changed? Orders haven't changed, the lamplighter said. That's just the trouble. Year by year, the planet is turning faster and faster and orders haven't changed. Which means that now that the planet revolves once a minute, I don't have an instant's rest. I light my lamp and turn it out once every minute. That's funny. Your days here are 1 minute long. It's not funny at all, the lamplighter said. You and I have already been talking to each other for a month. A month? Yes, 30 minutes, 30 days. Good evening. And he lit his lamp. 네, 여기서 손수건을 handkerchief 이렇게 하죠. 여기에 hand가 들어가 있지만 행으로 할 거예요. hand 소리를 안 내고 그 소리를 내고 handkerchief 이렇게 할 거예요. 그 다음에 reasonable, 합리적이다. 이거를 reasonable 이렇게 하지 않을 거고 reasonable 이렇게 할 거예요. 그 다음에 let's keep going. The little prince watched him, growing fonder and fonder of this lamplighter who was so faithful to orders. He remembered certain sunsets that he himself used to follow in other days, merely by shifting his chair. He wanted to help his friend. You know, I can show you a way to take a rest whenever you want to. I always want to rest, the lamplighter said, for it is possible to be faithful and lazy at the same time. The little prince continued. Your planet is so small that you can walk around it in 3 strides. All you have to do is walk more slowly, and you'll always be in the sun. When you want to take a rest, just walk, and the day will last as long as you want it to. What good does that do me, the lamplighter said, when the one thing in life I want to do is sleep? Then you're out of luck, said the little prince. 네, out of luck. 네, 할 수 없죠. 이런 뜻이죠. Do we have any questions? 여기 채팅에다 올려주시면 제가 답하겠습니다. I am, said the lamplighter. Good morning. And he put out his lamp. Now that man, the little prince said to himself as he continued on his journey, that man would be despised by all the others, by the king, by the very vain man, by the drunkard, by the businessman. Yet, he's the only one who doesn't strike me as ridiculous. Perhaps it's because he's thinking of something besides himself. He heaved a sigh of regret and said to himself again, that man is the only one I might have made my friend. But his planet is really too small. There's not room for 2. What the little prince dared not admit was that he most regretted leaving that planet because it was blessed with 1,440 sunsets every 24 hours. Chapter 15. The 6th planet was 10 times bigger than the last. It was inhabited by an old gentleman who wrote enormous books. Ah, here comes an explorer, he exclaimed when he caught sight of the little prince, who was feeling a little winded and sat down on the desk. He had already traveled so much and so far. Where do you come from? The old gentleman asked him. What's that big book? Asked the little prince. What do you do with it? I'm a geographer, the old gentleman answered. And what's a geographer? A scholar who knows where the seas are, and the rivers, the cities, the mountains, and the deserts. That is very interesting, the little prince said. Here at last is someone who has a real profession. And he gazed around him at the geographer's planet. He had never seen a planet so majestic. Your planet is very beautiful, he said. Does it have any oceans? I couldn't say, said the geographer. Oh, the little prince was disappointed. And mountains? I couldn't say, said the geographer. 네, 여기서 couldn't say는 음, 말을 못한다, 말을 못해, 할 수가 없어. 이게 아니라 난 몰라서 난 잘 모르겠어. 이런 뜻이에요. 모르니까 난 말을 못해. 여기서 이제 6번째 플래닛으로 왔는데 sixth 이거를 sixth 이렇게 하시면 안 되고 six 발음이 끝나지 않고 six 이렇게 하시면 됩니다. six 하고 호흡이 끊기지 않게 해주세요. 죄송해요. 잠시만요. All right. I couldn't say, said the geographer. And cities and rivers and deserts? I couldn't tell you that either, the geographer said. But you're a geographer. That's right, said the geographer, but I'm not an explorer. There's not one explorer on my planet. A geographer doesn't go out to describe cities, rivers, mountains, seas, oceans, and deserts. A geographer is too important to go wandering about. He never leaves his study, but he receives the explorers there. He questions them, and he writes down what they remember. And if the memories of one of the explorers seem interesting to him, then the geographer conducts an inquiry into that explorer's moral character. 네, 이거는 근데 대화였네요. geographer의 목소리로 했어야 되는데. Why is that? Because an explorer who told lies would cause disasters in the geography books, as would an explorer who drank too much. 여기를 어떻게 했나요, 제가 발음을? As would an explorer 이렇게 하지 않았고 as would an explorer 이렇게 했죠. 네, 이거를 하려면 배에 힘을 주셔야 as would an explorer 이렇게 될 수가 있어요. 잠시만요. 질문들은 없으신가요? 더널드님, 네, 발음, 네, sixth 어려워요. Alright. As would an explorer. Why is that? The little prince asked again. Because drunkards see double. 네, 술 주전뱅이라 그러나요? 술 취한 사람들은 두 개를 보니까. And the geographer would write down 2 mountains where there was only one. I know someone, said the little prince, who would be a bad explorer. Possibly. Well, when the explorer's moral character seems to be a good one, an investigation is made into his discovery. 여기를 discovery라고 하지 않았고 discovery로 했죠. By going to see it? No. That would be too complicated. But the explorer is required to furnish proofs. For instance, if he claims to have discovered a large mountain, he is required to bring back large stones from it. The geographer suddenly grew excited. But you come from far away. You're an explorer. You must describe your planet for me. And the geographer, having opened his logbook, sharpened his pencil. Explorers' reports are first recorded in pencil. Ink is used only after proofs have been furnished. Well, said the geographer expectantly. 네, geographer가 이제 기대를 하면서 이제 뭐라고 할 거야? 이렇게 하는 건데 여기를 well, said the geographer expectantly 이렇게 하면은 이게 안 돼요. 이걸 되게 빨리 한 호흡으로 가야 돼요. Oh, where I live, said the little prince, is not very interesting. It's so small. I have 3 volcanoes, 2 active, and 1 extinct. But you never know. You never know, said the geographer. I also have a flower. We don't record flowers, the geographer said. Why not? It's the prettiest thing. Because flowers are ephemeral. What does ephemeral mean? Geography, said the geographer, are the finest books of all. They never go out of fashion. It is extremely rare for a mountain to change position. It is extremely rare for an ocean to be drained of its water. We write eternal things. But extinct volcanoes can come back to life, the little prince interrupted. What does ephemeral mean? Whether volcanoes are extinct or active comes down to the same thing for us, said the geographer. For us, what counts is the mountain. That doesn't change. But what does ephemeral mean? Repeated the little prince, who had never in all his life let go of a question once he had asked it. It means which is threatened by imminent disappearance. Is my flower threatened by imminent disappearance? Of course. My flower is ephemeral, the little prince said to himself, and she has only 4 thorns with which to defend herself against the world. And I've left her all alone where I live. That was his first impulse of regret. But he plucked up his courage again. Where would you advise me to visit? He asked. The planet Earth, the geographer answered. 다시 해볼게요. The planet Earth, the geographer answered. It has a good reputation. And the little prince went on his way, thinking about his flower. All right. Any questions so far? All right. Are we good? 네. 여기에 ephemeral라는 단어가 수명이 짧은 이란 뜻인데 이거를 ephemeral이라고 할까요? ephemeral이라고 할까요? 네, 상관이 없어요. 왜냐하면 거기에 강세가 없기 때문에. 그래서 그냥 ephemeral 하면 돼요. imminent는 이제 곧이라는 거죠. 이제 곧 다가올. 네. 네, 제가 한국말이 조금 부족해서 모를 수도 있는데 네, imminent 그 뜻입니다. All right, chapter 16. Let me take a drink here. The 7th planet, then, was the Earth. The Earth is not just another planet. It contains 111 kings, including, of course, the African kings, 7,000 geographers, 900,000 businessmen, 7.5 million drunkards, 311 million vain men. In other words, about 2 billion grown-ups. 네, 여기에 comma를 할 때는 나 이렇게 갈 거고 다시 들어보세요. Including, of course, the African kings, 7,000 geographers 이렇게 갔죠. 900,000 businessmen 이렇게 갔고 7.5 million drunkards 그쵸? 짧게 해도 이게 쭉 갔어요. 311 million vain. 근데 여기 세미콜론 할 땐 뭐라고 어떻게 읽을까요? 네, 마침표처럼 읽을 거예요. 그래서 311 million vain men 이렇게 내릴 거예요. In other words, about 2 billion grown-ups. To give you a notion of the Earth's dimensions, I can tell you that before the invention of electricity, it was necessary to maintain, over the whole of 6 continents, a veritable army of 462,511 lamplighters. Seen from some distance, this made a splendid effect. The movements of this army were ordered like those of a ballet. First came the turn of the lamplighters of New Zealand and Australia. Then these, having lit their street lamps, would go home to sleep. Next, it would be the turn of the lamplighters of China and Siberia to perform their steps in the lamplighters' ballet, and then they too would vanish into the wings. Then came the turn of the lamplighters of Russia and India, then those of Africa and Europe, then those of South America and of North America. And they never missed their cues for their appearances on stage. It was awe-inspiring. Only the lamplighter of the single street lamp at the North Pole and his colleague of the single street lamp at the South Pole led carefree, idle lives. They worked twice a year. Chapter 17. Trying to be witty leads to lying more or less. witty는 되게 똑똑하려고 한 거 말하죠. What I just told you about the lamplighters isn't completely true, and I risk giving a false idea of our planet to those who don't know it. Men occupy very little space on Earth. If the 2 billion inhabitants of the globe were to stand close together, as they might for some big public event, they would easily fit into a city block that was 20 miles long and 20 miles wide. You could crowd all humanity onto the smallest Pacific islet. 네, islet는 작은 섬을 얘기하는 거죠. Grown-ups, of course, won't believe you. They're convinced they take up much more room. They consider themselves as important as the baobabs. So you should advise them to make their own calculations. They love numbers and they'll enjoy it. But don't waste your time on this extra task. It's unnecessary. Trust me. So once he reached Earth, the little prince was quite surprised not to see anyone. He was beginning to fear he had come to the wrong planet when a moon-colored loop uncoiled on the sand. Good evening, the little prince said, just in case. Good evening, said the snake. 네, 뱀을 만났어요. What planet have I landed on? Asked the little prince. On the planet Earth in Africa, the snake replied. Now, do you like my snake voice? Ah, and are there no people on Earth? It's the desert here. There are no people in the desert. Earth is very big, said the snake. The little prince sat down on a rock and looked up into the sky. I wonder, he said, if the stars are lit up so that each of us can find his own someday. Look at my planet. It's just overhead, but so far away. It's lovely, the snake said. What have you come to Earth for? 다시 해볼게요. What have you come to Earth for? I'm having difficulties with a flower, the little prince said. Ah, said the snake. And they were both silent. Where are the people? The little prince finally resumed the conversation. It's a little lonely in the desert. It's also lonely with people, said the snake. The little prince looked at the snake for a long time. You're a funny creature, he said at last, no thicker than a finger. But I'm more powerful than a king's finger, the snake said. The little prince smiled. You're not very powerful. You don't even have feet. You couldn't travel very far. 발도 없으면서 힘도 없다 그러네요. I can take you further than a ship, the snake said. He coiled around the little prince's ankle like a golden bracelet. Anyone I touch, I send back to the land from which he came, the snake went on. But you're innocent, and you come from a star. The little prince made no reply. I feel sorry for you being so weak on this granite earth, said the snake. I can help you someday if you grow too homesick for your planet. I can... Oh, I understand just what you mean, said the little prince. But why do you always speak in riddles? I solved them all, said the snake. And they were both silent. Now, do we have any questions so far? 없나요? All right, chapter 18. The little prince crossed the desert and encountered only one flower. A flower with 3 petals, a flower of no consequence. 네, 중요하지 않은 꽃을 만났대요. Good morning, said the little prince. Good morning, said the flower. Where are the people? The little prince inquired politely. The flower had one day seen a caravan passing. People? There are 6 or 7 of them, I believe, in existence. I caught sight of them years ago. But you never know where to find them. The wind blows them away. They have no roots, which hampers them a good deal. Goodbye, said the little prince. Goodbye, said the flower. 네, 오늘 여기까지 볼게요. 네, 어떠셨나요? 도움이 되셨나 모르겠어요. 우리 다음 주에는 we're going to read 4 chapters from 19 to 23, I believe. Okay? 네, good night, everybody.